Hey guys, welcome to Becky's Garden Paradise. So I just wanted to talk to you for a minute about why I garden, because I get this question a lot. And I got interested in gardening as a small child. My dad always tried to grow stuff wherever he could when we lived in a house. Ooh, sorry, a bee got me. Bumped off my arm. When we lived in a house when I was a small child, he had grapevines, and I remember him growing radishes and peppers and tomatoes and stuff like that. And then even when we lived in apartments, he grew house plants that he would overwinter inside in Ohio through the cold winters. And then, again, later on, when he lived in a house again, he, went right back to growing all kinds of stuff, from hot peppers that he used to send to me here in Florida because they were too hot for him, and pumpkins and squash and different things. And he always used to talk about how his dad had a big garden, and at one time his dad, my grandfather, owned a seed shop in Germantown, Ohio when he was growing up. And then, on the other side of the family, that was just the normal thing, the traditional thing for people to do years ago, was to, have a garden. Both sides of my family lived through the Great Depression, and, I've talked to other people who, when times were tough during the Great Depression, you didn't have any money, but you always had something to eat because everybody had a garden. So just think it's a great idea for everyone to grow what they can, even if you're in an apartment. When I lived in an apartment, I had a container garden on my patio, and I grew peppers and tomatoes and eggplant and different things. And then, my dream was to have my own backyard garden once I bought a house. So, within a year of me buying my house, I started growing things. I started with containers and raised beds, and then have eventually transitioned, to more in-ground row gardens, traditional style gardens. So I love gardening. That's my thing. That's my hobby, my passion, my escape when I'm gardening. If I ever feel upset in any way, if I don't feel good physically, if I'm tired or have a headache, working outside in my garden always makes me feel better. So, working with the plants, I feel closer to the Lord. You get fresh air, you get vitamin D, you get exercise. So, I encourage everyone to try to grow something, regardless of where you're at, even if it's one plant in a container. Start small and work your way up. If one plant dies, don't give up. Keep trying. So, I thank you all for joining me. Again, welcome to Becky's Garden Paradise. I plan to give you guys another garden tour so that you can see how everything's going. Probably tomorrow, but I just wanted to take a minute to talk to you a little bit about why I garden. And then I'll show you a couple of the things that I've done this morning. So thank you for joining me, and stay tuned so you can see what I planted today. Alright, so I have this space where I've transplanted 2 cucumbers that I'd started from seed, and they didn't take to the transplant. Sometimes they get transplant shock. They're also more sensitive to the sun. And they'd been in my carport, so they'd been getting like partial sun versus the direct sun that they get out here. And anyway, broke my heart, but gotta keep trying. So I have this cucumber that grew from seed that I planted. So it's climbing up this trellis that I put in last weekend. And I'm going to fill in this empty space that I have. I've already put my fertilizer in the furrow, or the little trench that I dug with my trusty garden spade. And I'm going to try to put in a couple seeds of this white wonder. I've tried to germinate these seeds a couple times, and they have not germinated, so I'm starting to think that this might be a bad pack of seeds, even though I just bought it this year. from Lowe's. Tried them in the ground, and I've tried them in little, 4-inch pots in my little seed starting operation that I have, and neither time did they germinate, but they're supposed to do well in the heat. I want to try again, and I still want to try to get a lemon cucumber started. So I'm just fascinated by them. Want to grow them for myself just because they're different. It's something I never see in the stores here. And then in between, I'm going to plant these asparagus beans, which will do well in the heat. So if my green beans, my rattlesnake green beans, they're supposed to do well in the heat, but just as a backup and to try something new, I'm going to plant some of these asparagus beans in the spaces between the cucumbers. Alright, so I'm trying to beat the rain. I already put 3 little, let me see if you can see, between my sunglasses, yeah, right here. Let's see where we're at. Yeah, I put 3 seeds in just because I want to try to make sure I get at least one. And then I'm gonna, those are the lemon cucumbers. These are the White Wonder cucumbers that I think I'm having, might not be any good, but we're gonna try one more time and see if third time's a charm. So we'll see, right? I'm gonna drop those in, and then, like I said, in these spaces between, I have these cucumber seeds, or I'm sorry, asparagus bean seeds that grow long, like, some people call them yard long beans. They're an Asian style green bean, good for sauteing, which is the way that my son prefers his green beans to be cooked, sauteed with some garlic. I had some last night with dinner. So those rattlesnake beans have been keeping us in a good supply of those. We've been eating green beans a couple times a week. So I'm going to get these opened up and drop them in these empty spaces. In between, we're supposed to get some good rain. I already heard a couple raindrops before I came out here, so I want to get these in before the rain comes. Alright, so I have the asparagus bean seeds in. They're little red beans, not used for dry beans. Just, they don't make very good, well, I mean, you could if you wanted to, but most people don't dry them for dry beans. So I put them about every 3 inches apart. Just because some will come up, some won't, and I'm just going to backfill or cover them up with the seed that I had moved aside, or the soil that I had moved aside. I know for my green beans, not all of them come up, so it's better to plant them a little bit thicker. I went back and put some more seeds in the empty spaces of my green beans, which is, it's good because it'll fill in the gaps, and the new plants will also grow up and kind of replace the older plants as they fizzle out. So, like I said, I just covered them up with my little garden troll, and I'm going to water them in. Even though we're expecting rain, always water your seeds in. Alright, so I went and got some water from my rain barrel. A little bit of water I have left. It hasn't rained a lot. It's rained some, but rained enough to help the garden pop. Not enough to fill up my rain barrels. Watering them real good. Let that water soak down. Alrighty. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed following me along as I planted those asparagus beans and tried at the cucumbers again, even though it's late here in Northeast Florida to plant cucumbers. I'm determined to try to make it work, to keep trying until I make it work. Usually, like, you could still grow things during the hot summer in Florida. You just are going to have to make sure that you keep them watered because it's so hot. gets really hot and it gets humid. So sometimes, you know, we have subtropical rain every afternoon, but then there are periods, you know, where we might go a few weeks without any rain, which we're just coming out of that. This past week we had rain 3 days, but it wasn't even enough to fill up my rain barrels. But anyway, so thank you for joining me, and I hope that you find joy in the garden.